Your time is up, Mr. Gibbs. By Kylee Conrad. George sat in the defendant's booth. The collar of his orange jumpsuit curled up like a piece of cooked bacon around his neck. He didn't much care, though. In a few hours, he'd be a free man with a new name and bank account. The hearing was just a formality. It was all a farce for him. A dog and pony show for the sake of looking good to the public and prove the scales of justice were being balanced with procedure and process. The judicial and punitive arms of the law were a fracture of the past since the Progen Neuropathic Institute's implementation across the country. Half the prisons shut down or went underground, as in literally below the surface. They were all connected to a central hyper-tunnel system, and it made escape impossible. The prisons weren't filled to the rafters like the old days anymore, though. They were only there for the most vile and violent offenders and those too chicken shit to choose option 2 or 3 at their sentencing. There were still trials and fools who pled not guilty, and they usually earned themselves a state-sponsored lobotomy before a judge would send them underground. Options 2 and 3 were far more fiscally prudent these days. Plus, their success rate was up to 86.6%, and the number of reoffenders was practically non-existent. George wasn't worried, though. He was still young enough to be desirable to some old rich scumbag about to croak and desperate for a new pair of legs to scheme in. And that was fine. He always found a way back to being himself. The downside was lugging the extra brain baggage. It was getting a little crowded up there in the old cerebellum. Still, George wasn't worried. It wasn't unheard of, a new consciousness taking over a felon then turning into a criminal offender with their new sense of invincibility, so it wasn't unreasonable to see George sitting in the booth again. He knew that the judge and the attorneys and scientists would all automatically think that the old coot got a little too big for his new younger britches. And that was fine by George Gibbs and the rest of them rattling around up there in his noggin. All he had to do was plead guilty, and the judge would have to offer the choices of sentences. Number 3 was the way to be free, if you were in the lucky percentage of the population able to reverse it. There was no way he would ever pick number 2 and let the Institute stick a time bomb in his skull. Seemed like there wasn't anybody who got number 2 who wasn't permanently walking around with scrambled eggs for brains after getting that hunk of hardware shoved in their temple and then ripped back out a few hours later. Just goes to show 20 years of solitary truly is hell, and should be in the cruel and unusual punishment category. Something about making a person mentally live alone in a cage for 20 plus years in their mind in a matter of hours seems cruel and unusual for sure. It's like your brain doesn't fit with the rest of you after it thinks it's lived a different life. George wondered what his new name would be. George Gibbs was a decent enough name. Respectable at any rate. The hardest part about being George was getting his signature right. He practiced for days. Thankfully, nobody clued in. A proper overlay would know their own signature without hesitation, even in a new suit. It's just one of those things that's second nature. As long as it wasn't a really long name or hard to pronounce, he'd be fine. "All rise," said the bailiff. The judge took his seat. "Please be seated." "Mr. Gibbs," the judge began. "Are you prepared to receive your sentence?" "Yes, I choose option 3. "No, Mr. Gibbs. That's not what's happening today. You've exhausted your right to option 3. "But I plead guilty," George shouted. "Mr. Gibbs, refrain yourself or you'll be removed. You have 2 options. Go underground for the customary sentence for your crime or relinquish yourself to the Institute to be examined and reformatted and studied." "I didn't do it then. I'm innocent." "This is your last warning, Mr. Gibbs. If you don't make a choice, I will be forced to sentence you myself." George started to sweat through his orange jumpsuit. "Your time is up, Mr. Gibbs," said the judge. "It wasn't me. I swear." "Very well. Let the record show the defendant refuses to declare an answer. It is therefore my duty to sentence you to 216 months underground." 18 years. "I can't do 18. George cried. "You should have thought about that before you found yourself back in my court, Mr. Gibbs, or is it Mr. Pugh, or Mr. Green, or Mr. Lyle? Bailiffs, take them all away to the tubes." The judge hammered his gavel. George was removed from the booth. The front of his jumpsuit was saturated with his own urine, but that was the least of his worries.